Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down and chat to amazing humans about their journeys. For these episodes, I'm talking about neurodiversity. Today, I'm very happy to introduce Angus Baskerville to the conversation. Welcome, Angus.
Hello.
Hi, nice to have you. So I'm not going to do too much of an introduction. I'm just going to ask you to tell us a story about your journey with neurodiversity, please.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome and ADHD. I first started showing signs of autism at the age of 3.
Okay.
And this is when I actually was quite severely autistic because, I wasn't speaking very much. I was screaming and things were quite a problem. But from the age of 3, my parents moved me and my sister to South Africa.
Wow.
And I spent the next 12 years of my life in South Africa, actually. And the problem was in South Africa is they're very behind in terms of their knowledge of autism. And, as a result, it was very hard to get formally diagnosed. So despite me showing all the symptoms and things like that, I wasn't able to get a diagnosis. And this did cause a variety of different problems because everyone at school always saw me as the odd child, the stupid child, the naughty child. That's often what I was always known as. And as a result, due to lack of understanding, I was kicked out of 3 schools.
Wow.
And the teachers didn't get me. And bullying has been a major problem of my life all through school. I did used to get physically abused by all the other children. And whilst the teachers always saw me as being the naughty one, because I was the only one that was behaving differently to the other students, they were unaware that each day when I was going in, I was being beaten up by the older kids and I was always being excluded by the other children who were always seeing me as the naughty child, the stupid child. But having said all that, I'm also, with my parents desperate to try and find the right school for me, none of which suited my needs, I attended a total of 15 different schools over the whole course of my life.
Wow.
And also, the thing is, my parents decided to go down the therapy route in terms of helping me rather than the medication route. Because from what we came to realise, medication often had side effects, and we came across quite a few people who are autistic over in England, actually, whose parents tried to go down the medication route, and the medication actually made them worse. Whereas the therapies that they took me for in South Africa, yes, they were a lot cheaper over in South Africa than they'd be over in England, but I was still unable to get a diagnosis. But the best thing about the therapies is that the therapies worked on the bare root of the problem rather than just the tip of the iceberg, which is generally what medication does. But I mean, that's only my opinion. It's only from my own experience. I mean,
Of course, yeah.
Some people might say the medication helped them, and maybe it does. But for me and for all the people we came across, medication was just like putting a plaster over it, whereas the therapy tackled the bare root of the problem. And as a result, we heard that the success rate from therapies is 10 times higher than medication.
Wow.
And that the therapies I underwent did make me a bit more high functioning, and I became a bit less severely autistic. I became more functioning, basically.
Yeah.
But the problem was I was still being bullied regularly every day at school. I was still going from one school to the next. No schools were meeting my needs. I was unable to make friends. And this did cause severe mental health problems as well. And mental health problems should not go hand in hand with Asperger's syndrome. But from what I've come to realise, lack of understanding of autism, when people think you're being odd, you're being stupid, when really it's your neurology, which you can't help.
Yeah.
That, without a doubt, is a first-class ticket to mental health. And that's what I'm always looking to obviously change. But having said all of that, whenever I obviously explain to people about my story, I would never tell anyone it because I want a pity party from everyone, or because I want to play the victim.
Yeah.
It's all about inspiring others. But when we came back to England when I was 15 years old, I was able to finally get a diagnosis. And that's when things did start to improve, because I was finally able to get funding to get me into a special school, which obviously housed lots of children on the spectrum. And I was also able to have access to speech and language therapy. But things were still a bit of a challenge because obviously at that point, I still couldn't socialise with people. I could not have a conversation with anyone even. I could not socialise at all. I still had no friends. Concentration and focus was also a major issue for me.
Yeah.
I really struggled with concentration and focus, which affected my GCSEs at school, etc. And I really struggled with schoolwork. And also the other thing as well was I was very sensitive still to, sound, noise, loud touch, crowds. I hated it. But it wasn't until I actually found magic that improved a lot. Because when I found magic, basically, things started to improve, because all of a sudden I saw it. I was taught this basic card trick by someone, and I embraced that and saw it as my passion. And within minutes, all of a sudden, for the first time, I was sitting for hours perfecting a new trick and learning it. And through that, my concentration focus skills began to really improve. And I was then able to make friends for the first time. Because when I found magic, that I was 17 years old when I found magic, and this was when I just started sixth form.
Yep.
So that's when things started to improve, because I was able to make friends for the first time, and I was put forward for the school and talent competition, and I ended up coming first place. Wow. And I was always perfecting all my tricks on the borders, because this was a boarding school that I was at.
Yeah.
So things really started to improve from that front. And also I was asked to go into my local pub to perform magic, working for tips, basically. And that worked quite well for me as well, because despite it being very noisy, because I was so engaged in what I was doing, I was able to shut off from all the loud noise, and gradually I became a lot less sensitive. But the biggest one yet was actually I became a lot better at socializing, because all of a sudden I had an excuse to get out of my room. Originally, I was in my room, shut away from the outside world lot, because I was just too scared to face it. But when I found magic, that gave me a good excuse to actually go out there and start socializing with people, because I was showing tricks to people, and that improved my social skills massively. And that's one of the things that also enabled me to make friends. But my self-esteem also went from 0 to 100, because it was a great feeling being able to wow people, having this unique skill that I could use to wow and impress people with. And obviously that was good for my self-esteem.
Yeah.
So my self-esteem became a lot better as well. And that's all how magic helped me, simply from learning one trick. But what it's taught me more than anything is that when you find your passion and embrace it, I mean, firstly, it's never too late, but when you find your passion and embrace it, opportunities are absolutely endless. And not only has magic massively improved all my day-to-day life skills, I've created my own career opportunity out of it as well. And now I'm running my own full-time business. So it just shows there's a light at the end of every tunnel. And whilst the road through school, etc., for people on the spectrum can be very challenging, because our brains are wired differently to neurotypicals, I mean, it can be very tough. Yeah. But once you've made it through, you have the potential and ability to achieve so much success. And when I look back at challenges I faced in previous years, I didn't think I'd be where I am now. And my family have said the same thing as well. So this is all about inspiring other people about, never giving up, always encouraging you to find your passion and embrace it sooner rather than later. Because like I said, opportunities are endless. So that's everything on that front so far. But I'm always looking for ways to obviously raise awareness for autism and mental health, which I can get a bit more to later. Yeah. But now, obviously, I'm a full-time magician. I perform at weddings, corporate events, private parties, functions, promotions. I've travelled all over the UK doing big events. I performed at Autism's Got Talent 3 times. I've done the Autism Hero Award ceremony. I've entertained and performed magic for numerous celebrities, i.e. Mo Farah, Roman Kemp, Jasper Carrot, Frank Bruno. And I am looking to do this. I am looking to develop a really successful career in the future, where I'll be obviously touring around the world. It is my dream. And I'm also now running magic clubs at schools, where I'm going into schools on a weekly basis, running after school or lunchtime magic clubs for them. Because I want to try and introduce them to magic sooner rather than later. Because if I'd done magic much earlier on, half of the challenges might not have happened. Because it's not about, whilst magic might be not everyone's special interest, it's all about teaching them a unique skill they can use to wow and impress their friends with. But also, like I said, it's really good for improving people's communication skills. It's really good for resilience, really good for concentration focus, because it does require a lot of concentration focus when learning a trick.
Of course.
But it's all about, improving people's lives for the better, basically. And all going well, some might decide they want to be a magician. But above all, it's about, giving them a unique skill they can use to wow and impress friends with, which is really good for self-esteem, which is always first prize for, general school children, especially those on the spectrum. So that's roughly everything from what you asked so far. So, yeah.
Well, there's so much in there, and it's incredible, Angus. I'm inspired listening to you, because I think what's beautiful in there is, you've been on a very difficult journey from a young age, looking at that whole sort of moving away from the UK and all that time you spent in a world where it was quite brutal for you. It sounds, very, very challenging, to now where you are. It's incredible. I genuinely feel really inspired by the way that you've sort of approached life. And I don't like the fact that you've been through those hard experiences. So if we can I just go back to a little bit of those years when you were living in South Africa before you came back to the UK at 15?
Yeah.
What was going on inside your head? What was the feelings that you were experiencing? Can you describe those at all?
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, the biggest feeling I had more than anything was that everyone hated me. And I was constantly feeling like the world was against me. And of course, one of the biggest things was very, very poor mental health, because I just thought, why does everyone hate me? I mean, I'm just being myself and things like that. And because I wasn't processing things as quick, because I was, taking things literally, I was very sensitive to various things, because I was behaving differently, because my, vestibular was out of kilter, basically. My sensory system was out of kilter. I'm trying to explain this as best I can, but because I couldn't process things as quick, because obviously I was behaving differently, I was very sensitive and things like that. People always saw me as the stupid one. And obviously with ADHD as well, it was causing me to be very hyperactive, etc. But people always considered me as being stupid and odd, and that did cause me to feel very depressed and very anxious a lot of the time. Basically, the biggest one was feeling like the world was against me, basically. And of course that did lead, like I said, poor mental health, and this did cause suicidal thoughts. This did cause moments of when I was self-harming. I was banging my head against walls. I was running away, and I even attempted suicide a few times when things got too much. When things got too much for me. But if it hadn't been for those challenges, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am now. So it's all a gift and dark packaging, if you ask me. But I mean, whilst it might not make it easy, the big thing that went into my head, which answers your question, is it just felt like the world was against me, basically. And that's the just answer I can give. But like I said, I'd never play the victim over it. It's all there's always people out there that are dealing with worse, if that makes sense.
It sounds, but it still sounds like you've been through a hell of a journey, right? With that, if you felt like the world was against you and it wasn't but kudos to you. And
you could say that.
And amazing. In terms of support then for you, because obviously you went down the therapy route versus a medication route, which I totally understand some of the reasons why that is. How much support did you have around you? Because obviously you had your parents around, but did you have any friends or people about?
I didn't, unfortunately. No, I mean, I'm in South Africa as well. I mean, all our family are based in England. We're all from England, so all our family lived over in England, and we saw them reasonably. We always came back to England twice a year, once in the summer holidays here and once for Christmas. But the problem is, it was just my mum, dad, and sister over in South Africa, and they've always been incredibly supportive. I mean, I've never had any problems with support from family. They've always been supportive and sacrificing what they could to obviously help. But of course, the school curriculum, etc., in South Africa didn't make it easy for them. But regarding friendships and things like that, there was no and speech and language therapy, the sort of support you get for autism over in South Africa. Unfortunately, that wasn't there, because, like I said, autism was pretty much unknown at the time over in South Africa. So obviously there was no support on that front. But on the other hand, I did have the therapies and that work in the neurology, basically. And it's not just for people on the spectrum. It's for people with things like dyslexia, people with cerebral palsy, even, and stuff like that. Stuff that all works on the root and cause of the problems to try and make people less sensitive, works on the sensory system. That was, like I said, that was a lot cheaper over in South Africa, and I had access to a lot of that. And people there would understand me and would understand where I was coming from. But despite obviously all of that, despite being taken to endless psychologists by my mum, I was unable to get a formal diagnosis of autism. But I mean, at least I always had the family support. So I mean, that's something which I definitely had, if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does, definitely. And it is such a big part, community, family support around you, loads of people that you can turn to when you're really struggling. So you came back to the UK, you got into an education system, you got the right support, you got the diagnosis, and how did you feel when that diagnosis was announced?
It felt great, to be honest. I mean, obviously it took me a while to process exactly what it was at first.
Sure, yeah.
But in general, what it did for me more than anything is it enabled me to actually understand myself for the first time. It enabled people at school to understand me for the first time, as well as the teachers, etc., as well. So it just felt great that finally we knew what it was. Finally, I was able to understand myself and things like that, and I knew that everyone around me was able to understand me.
That's good.
So that's how it felt, really.
Brilliant. No, I think that's great. And people were accepting of what was going on at the time, because obviously you come from an environment where people didn't understand it and they were not very nice. And now you're in a place where people are understanding, or you've got something officially that gives them sight.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more understanding now than there was, definitely. No question about that. But I mean, obviously not everyone is understanding. You do I did still come across people who are indulgent, and even when we tried to explain to various people that it was the autism which obviously was affecting me in various different ways, some people would turn around and say, no, don't play the autism card or anything like that. But the reality is, there is definitely a lot more understanding now. I mean, obviously you are still always going to get people out there who are indulgent, unfortunately, and don't know, and there are still people out there that don't even know what it is. But trust me, it's not. There's so much more support, so much more understanding over in this country than there was in South Africa, and there's definitely a lot more understanding now than there ever was over in Africa.
Yeah, brilliant.
So,
and that's why we're doing these recordings, because we want people to start learning and understanding a bit more about what's going on and the sort of experiences. And there's a lot of people out there whose children are going through very similar experiences, no doubt, to what you're going through, albeit they might be in this country or wherever they're listening around the world. But it's so important to reach out for that support and get that help where you can.
I mean, I've spoken to loads of parents at the moment since I obviously became an ambassador for Autism Awareness, and since I've obviously started doing talks at like conferences, etc. I mean, I've come across loads of people all through my life. I mean, some people who I'm friends with, some people who my parents are friends with. We know loads of people who have severely autistic children, and they're currently dealing with a really hard time. No question about it at all. So you always got to be grateful for what you have, because there's always someone, like I said, there's always someone out there worse off. But the sooner you can get them diagnosed, the sooner you can get them the help and support they need, the better.
And I just touching on that piece about there's always people out there that are worse off. I think a lot of that is personally, from my perspective, is to do with the fact that they don't know what support they should get or what they need or what happens. And, you think about how long you struggled with all of that journey of all those issues before the diagnosis. It'd be nice if we could get that sooner so that we're able to make adjustments quicker.
Absolutely. And I mean, advice I'd give as well is, I mean, I know a lot of people we know as well who have autistic children. I think I've vaguely mentioned this at the very start, but and a lot of people do choose to go down the medication route. But I mean, in my opinion, I mean, like I said, this is only my opinion, but therapy is always the best answer, because that's obviously with a big success rate. But with medication, we do know people who obviously went down the medication route and actually made them worse, or those that has big side effects. But therapy, whilst therapy is obviously more expensive and it's a lot more effort and it's a bit of a longer process. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a big challenge. And I mean, it's not easy, but the end result is a lot more. The end result is obviously what you're definitely looking for.
Well, and I think
with medication, it's a bit unpredictable, but that's only my opinion.
Well, and look, your case is an example, right? You haven't gone down the medication route, you've gone down the therapy route, and look what you're doing now. You've got a business, you're building something, you've got a passion for your business, you've got a passion for this subject. I think you're ticking quite a few really positive boxes with all of this, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, touching based on your thing about medication, at one point my parents did try it, because when I was at this school where I was at my worst, basically, because the bullying was going bad. I mean, I couldn't adapt to anything that they were doing. When I was at this school where things really were at their worst, they did try putting me on antidepressants, which was actually an ADHD type medication that helps with concentration and focus, but also it works well as an antidepressant. But they took me off that. They took me off that very quickly, because it actually made me worse, because I was crying a lot more than I usually was. I wasn't sleeping. I was a lot more anxious. So it actually made me worse. So they took me off that pretty quickly. But another thing I thought I'd mention as well, which is obviously something that I would want people to be aware of, because the last thing I'd want is for anyone to make a mistake like this. This girl we heard about in South Africa, she was only 12 years old. Her parents put her on this ADHD medication that my parents put me on. And this girl actually had ADHD, so she did struggle with concentration, focus, but she wasn't depressed. From what we heard, she wasn't depressed. But her parents put her on this medication, and within less than a week, they came back from going out one evening, and they found their daughter hanging from her bedroom curtains.
Wow!
So it just shows you've got to be. It just shows you've got to be so careful. But I mean, this is the sort of thing I really want to raise awareness about.
Yeah, and it needs a lot of careful management. I think that's the critical point, isn't it? You can't just give people pills and hope for the best. You've got to carefully manage and monitor that. And if it's not, there's so many conversations we could lead off of that. We're sort of coming towards the end of this, believe it or not. 20 minutes flies by, 20 odd minutes flies by so quickly in this world. But I do just want to touch on one thing, magic. I think it's incredible the way that helped to. It sounds like it transformed a lot of your life in many ways, because it gave you something you're passionate about. So firstly, just one quick question: who introduced you to magic?
Well, watching Dynamo on TV is what first triggered my interest, and that got me interested. But what really started it was when we went on holiday with a friend of my family's, and they had my mum's best friend from school. Basically, we went on holiday with them to Wales.
Okay.
And their son, that she has two sons, and both of whom knew like one or two card tricks.
Okay.
They weren't magicians, but they showed me this card trick basically,
Yeah.
which I was fascinated by. And they taught me how it was done.
Yeah.
And that's what really triggered my interest. Because once I knew how it was done, I went around showing it to everyone.
Okay.
And gradually I realized how it was really helping my self-esteem.
Yeah.
And I realized how much I was enjoying it. And that's when I decided I wanted to do it.
That's incredible. What an incredible thing, you know, just a small, but this shows, doesn't it? And the smallest thing sometimes can just trigger that enthusiasm and that response that you've had. And I hope and wish for everybody out there when somebody is struggling that you can help them to find that thing. And it doesn't have to be magic.
It's why I'm trying to go into schools, because it's amazing how something as little as one card trick can actually change someone's life for the better. It's the same with mental health. Asking someone a simple question of "Are you okay?" but asking them "Are you okay?" again, and that technique's credited to Roman Kemp. But simply letting your friend know that you're there for them, asking someone "Are you okay?" twice, it can actually be you can actually be saving someone's life. And this relates a lot to the mental health front, which is obviously what I have studied and have done awareness of. But it's amazing how the smallest of all things can actually be a life-changing exercise, or even a life-saving exercise.
Yeah, and I think we should hang on to that thought, you know, for everybody out there listening, for anybody that's struggling, is sometimes we don't have to find the biggest solution. We just got to find small things that help us to feel more connected or feel something that's more positive in our experience. Angus, we're right at the end of this, and I hate to sort of cut in and sort of there's so many questions and things we could talk about, and no doubt people will have questions. So I want to allow that for, you know, people to reach out and connect to you and find your work and what you do. And I'm sure, you know, I'm connected to lots of people that run conferences and events, and they look for motivational speakers all the time, which I think you're a fabulous, you know, speaker and inspirational speaker, and I have to say, Angus, I've really enjoyed listening to you talking from your perspective.
Thanks for having me on.
That's all right, no worries. Do you have any final comments or a final passing thought that you want to share with people?
Well, one final thing I always love to say at the end of obviously whenever I've done something like this, to all people listening, going back to what I was saying, whilst things can be very challenging, whilst achieving goals, you know, might always be difficult, you know, it all falls under the same from Winnie the Pooh. You are braver than you believe, you are stronger than you seem, you are smarter than you think. And the other thing I wanted to say as well, which I think relates a lot to my journey, but not just my journey, thousands of people out there as well who, you know, have had a tough journey, obviously, getting through life. There is a light at the end of every tunnel. Because like I said, once you make it through, you do have the potential and ability to achieve success. And half of the people who are doing really well now, a lot of them had to hit rock bottom first. But I'm sure everyone is familiar with the fact that when you hit rock bottom, there's only one way to go, and that's up. But it all comes under the phrase which speaks volumes to me, and that is, there is a light at the end of every tunnel. And that's what I want everyone to go away with. Never give up. Anything is possible. Keep your head up.
Brilliant stuff. Angus, we're going to leave it at that. And I love that. And I wish you all the very best with everything that you're doing. Big support in terms of where you are, what you're doing, and the future for you is looking very, very positive. There's a lot of light in that tunnel for you, obviously, and you can help others. So thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute
Thanks so much for having me.
Take care of yourself. Bye now.
No, you too. I mean, to everyone out there in Neurodiversity Week, you know, look after yourselves.
Yeah,
good luck to everyone.
Brilliant stuff. Take care.